Hey everyone, welcome to today's video where we're gonna look at AMD stocks, especially due to the quite a lot of interest from the other YouTubers out there, especially the larger YouTubers. But I'm gonna start the video today looking at the semi-analysis die yield calculator and try to figure out if we can estimate on expectations for AMD's 9800 X3D chip that is kind of selling like hotcake. Because I think everyone in those other videos are talking about AI. Today I would have wanted to focus on the other kind of areas of AMD's product portfolio, and mainly with their gaming CPUs. Why do I talk about that specifically? So look at this headline here. You can see that Ryzen 9800 X3D is selling like hotcake in a German major retailer Mindfactory. Apparently they sold around 8,700 CPUs in a single day. These CPUs cost around 500-600 euros, 500-600 US dollar. So it's quite a lot of revenue coming in a single day now, assuming that obviously they won't be able to have this kind of sales every single day for 1 year. But you have to remember, this is one major retailer in one country, right? We haven't even talked about USA, that is 5 times the population of Germany and the rest of Europe and rest of the other countries in the world. So you would, I mean, with these kind of numbers here, I wouldn't be surprised if they sell tens of thousands of these chips every single day. So looking at other retailers in other countries, for example, look at this one in Sweden and Norway and so on. You're only allowed to buy one single chip at a time. And if you put your order today, at the earliest, you should expect it to be shipped on the 90th of February. So more than 1 month from now. That's the shipping date. So you're probably, if you order today, you're gonna wait at least close to 2 months. Then I went to the other chip, like the earlier generation, the 4th generation 7800 X3D, so the previous chip to this one. And look at the same thing here, although you are allowed to buy more than one, but they're still not in stock. So all these X3D chips are like selling like hotcakes. In fact, if you look at Mr. McAfee from AMD, senior vice president at AMD, and he had an interview with PC World when he said, so the journalist asked him my question is, continuing shortages of the 3D parts. This is becoming crazy and nobody can find these processors pretty much anywhere. This is a global trend. And you can see that what Mr. McAfee is saying that, quote, what I can say is that we have been ramping up our manufacturing capacity on a monthly, quarterly output on X3D parts. That's 7,000 X3D and 9,000 X3D. It's crazy how much we have increased over what we were planning. I will say that the demand that we have seen from 98X100 3D and 7800 X3D has been unprecedented. And then they continue on this, discussion about the shortages and how much AMD is ramping up. So there's a official AMD comment from that, right? Then we went obviously on WCCF Tech, where they said that AMD witnessed record rise in client and workstation CPU market share over the past quarters. And Intel continues to disappoint. Same story again, like AMD taking market share in essentially every single market, be it client, it's laptop, in desktops, in server CPUs, anything that has with CPUs, AMD is taking market share. And remember that due to this all AI kind of discussions over the past couple of years, a lot of big companies haven't necessarily updated or focused on the CPUs for the servers, right? So the servers have been focused on getting as much GPU power as they can, but they haven't put in as much investment in the CPU side of the servers. So we are probably going into a super cycle of updates of big companies, big cloud providers like Google, Alphabet, Meta, Facebook, Amazon, everyone spending a lot on newer CPU lineups. So in addition to that, I genuinely believe that in 2025 and 2026, the CPU market will be much, much better. So looking at Amazon, their best sellers, again, look at this, essentially the entire top 10 is just AMD, just AMD after AMD after AMD. It's X3D chip obviously on the top, but then there's the normal cheaper one, 5600X gaming CPU as well. So it's a lot of AMD in Amazon's top line. I mean, even honestly, this is insane. I've never seen something like this, not even in Intel's best days, back in 2015 and 14. The top 13 chips are AMD. The first Intel chip is the 12700K, a 3-year-old chip. So this is I don't know how to explain it, that this is insane for AMD. Then going to want something else here, you can see that according to this gentleman on Twitter, Amazon back orders now up to March of 31st. So essentially you put order on Amazon, you should expect back orders to maybe be delivered on March 31. Like, there's just so much going in AMD's favor on the CPU side. So going now to the numbers, remember this is the last reported earnings, right? At 6.8 billion totally. I've been talking about data center. Everyone has been talking about AMD's data center, especially their AI GPU part. But forgetting that part, we know that that's gonna grow, other than maybe a slight slowdown in Q1 and Q2 of 2025, where we possibly will see a little bit slower rate of increase, but then again put on the gas pedal in the second half of the year. It's possible that that's not the scenario, but I think that we should be a little bit cautious though, since there is some kind of signals out there that before AMD manages to ramp up the MI350X, remember I'm not talking about the new MI325X, which is a successor to MI300. I'm talking the complete new generation MI350X, which is based on CDNA 4. And it's gonna really challenge NVIDIA not only on inference. Remember, AMD's foothold in AI GPUs, the place where they're actually doing great is on inference. But in training, they've been kind of lagging behind NVIDIA. But with MI350X in the second half of the year, we should see AMD perform very well even in that area. And despite all of this, we also know that before we go to the client's numbers, on the data center, we actually know that as time goes on, the inference market will become more and more important down the road, because training is, where these big companies train their different models. But the point of this whole AI thing is to actually get consumers and engineering companies use these models. That's the goal. And when that's, when we are at that stage, obviously inference will be much more important. And I think AMD's market share, in contradiction to this price target cuts from different analysts, is gonna grow based on that alone. But again, we are not here to talk about AI this video. We're talking about the client and the gaming segment most importantly. Now, the client segment, look at the revenue here. My expectations is around 2.1 billion in Q4. Gaming at 585 million. After an absolute disaster Q3 numbers for the gaming. And we know that if we scroll back all the way to, let's say 2022, you can see that client was at around 2.1 billion, which I expect right now also finally coming back to those kind of high levels after quite a bit of slowdown since then. But the gaming, look at the gaming, they went from high 1 billion, almost 2 billion, most of the time well above 1.5 billion. And then just from 2024, just completely losing it. And honestly, I think Q4, is it possible that I'm way too conservative on this number 585 million? Because seeing these headlines here, just make the math, right? If you take, assuming that AMD sells, let's say 1,098,X3Ds in 1 quarter, that's around 500 million in revenue. Now, I have a very difficult time to figure out how much 98X3Ds they are able to sell in 1 quarter, especially seeing this headlines from 8,700 sold in 1 day in one single country's biggest retailer. It's possible. If in Germany they sell, I don't know, let's say 50,000 to 100,000 in a single month, is it possible that they sell at least 100,000 only in Germany in 1 quarter? And that's one country. I think it's possible. I don't know. I really would like to see your point of view. How many 98X3Ds do you think they're gonna sell in 3 months? But if we assuming that 1 million is realistic, and look at the die calculator. So remember that the 98X3D is not a state of the art, at least not the latest TSMC node. It's on the 4 nanometer, so it's at least a couple of years old. They have insane kind of yield on this, and this die is very small. It's only 70 square millimeters, 70.6 square millimeters. So I assume the width 8.5, the height 8.3, total size around 70.6 square millimeters, which is represented by these squares as you can see here. Now, assuming it's a 300 millimeter wafer and we have a defect rate at around 0.08 or around 1% almost 0.8, we would get around 892 dies, of which around 805 are good dies. Then we have like 47 defective dies, and then we have some parts. So let's say around 8 out of roughly 900 dies completely, which 800 of those are good dies. Now, as they add the 3D chip on it, it's another manufacturing step. Let's say we lose, I don't know, I'm just guessing here completely, but let's say we go from 800 good dies to 750, right? So they lose quite substantially, like around 6% of those in the second manufacturing as they add up the X3D. Remember that when we are talking about these X3D chips, what differs them from the 9800X compared to 9800X3D? The 3D thing is essentially the cache memory that they put on it on top of the die. So it's I think you should assume some sort of a loss in the manufacturing yield there, because there's never 100% like yield. So assuming that, they would get still like 800 or 750 good dies per wafer. 750 dies per wafer. I mean, with 100 dies, they could satisfy 70,000 customers on a month. So it's not 100 wafers for AMD is nothing, and 100 wafers for TSMC is nothing. So I think when they say that they're gonna ramp up the production capability, I think for sure that it's especially on 4 nanometer node, right? We are not talking like the 3 nanometer node. So on 4 nanometer is a mature node, so I think it's really possible. And what AMD is probably doing, that if they see that the sales of the rest of the lineup is not as good, they obviously advanced it and moved over to the X3D. So that's the great thing with AMD, that the 9800X, if they see that demand is a little bit less for that one, all they can do is just like send it to the second manufacturing line and add the 3D chip to it. And this is the one of the strengths of AMD because it's the same basic chip, like the 9800X, the 9700X, the 9600X. 9600X is a 8 core, the same kind of die that we have here. All these dies have 8 cores. Those that are a little bit defect, maybe they look at it, oh okay, so only 7 of the cores are good, let's bin it down to 6 cores, and we call them all these defective dies, 47 of them. Maybe 40 of these 47 are like good enough to be a 6 core chip, so then they call it 9600X. That is the advantage of the chiplet strategy with AMD. So honestly, I mean, they are killing Intel with these kind of chips. I mean, there's like, if you look at the numbers out there, they are just selling like more than like hotcakes. So is it possible that I'm way too conservative on this number, on the gaming segment specifically? On the client, I think they will continue to go up from 1.8 at least to, close to 2 billion at the bare minimum. But they're gonna continue to climb there. But on gaming side, this is where I'm like so lost in a way. Like, I think they for sure will be better than Q3, but is it possible that I'm way too conservative? So in fact, let's go up here and change the number. So let's change it in on the gaming side. Let's go to let's say that my theory is correct and they say 1 million in this quarter, which means another 500 million or so in revenue. But I'm gonna be a little bit less optimistic than that. Let's say we go with 825. So what numbers do we get then? At 825, wow. I mean, we're gonna get, if everything else equal, AMD will have 7.8 billion in revenue, which is in even a little bit higher than the upper end of the guidance. And with those kind of numbers, I mean, honestly, like, this could be really nice, because look what happens with that additional 300 million in gaming revenue. So if we go back here, before I change that, my model would give us a GAAP earnings per share, so EPS of 61 cents. As I change that number, from around 500 million to 800 million in gaming revenue, the earnings goes from 61 cents to around 75 cents. GAAP EPS, and the non-GAAP is way above 1 now, almost $1.2 here. So I think, I mean, I don't know, guys, like, what do you folks feel? Like, is it possible that the rumors about slowdown on AMD's AI Instinct sales on the data center is for the first half of the year due to that, the MI300, which is readily available at this time and in high volume production. Maybe it was competitive last year, but maybe as we are in early 2025, it's not as competitive as it was last year, because it's such a quite evolving market now in the AI GPU market. So maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what we are seeing, that in the rumors that AMD's first half a year won't be, increasing that much as we saw, 20-40% on the data center revenue. Maybe it's gonna slow down to around 10%. I don't know. It's possible. I'm not fully confident that those rumors are correct, but since they are coming, for example, from Dylan Patel, that owns this site, SemiAnalysis, and he's such a great guy to listen to with so much insight in this semiconductor space, I think we should give it a little bit of at least credence, and especially knowing that some of the analysts obviously cut the price target at the same time frame. It gives us a little bit of a cautious warning signal. Not a whole lot to be worried about, but maybe first half is not that great. And if that's true, and if that scenario is true, and the AI data center slows down a little bit for AMD, especially as Nvidia continues to grow, it could affect the price of the stock a little bit, because the narrative has been a lot about AI. But in the long term, I am fully confident that in the second half, the revenue growth will continue even faster. And then by the time, we could see AMD's gaming to go close to 2 billion maybe. If 9800 X3D selling like hotcake, and then AMD's GPU side for gaming enters the market, 97 XT that they launched on CES. And rumors on that is also like great, especially in the mid-range, so selling in high volume. We could have a 2 billion a quarter already in Q3 and Q4 for gaming. So you could argue that then, even if they lose a little bit of, even if I'm a little bit optimistic on data center, the uptake on the client and gaming would still make sure that we have around 10 to 11 billion in revenue in Q4. And if those numbers are, what we're going to end up with, 11 billion in revenue in Q4, look at my numbers for, look at what I'm expecting there in Q4 of this year. That would give us an EPS of $2 per share per quarter, right? That's $8 on a run rate by Q4 of this year. We are talking what? If the stock goes down to around the hundreds that some people talk about, some people even talking about 90, we are talking about PE ratio of 10, 11, 12. It's like peanuts for this kind of company. Then we could target a price target of $300-400 at a PE ratio of 40. So yeah, I'm really seeing this. This is once in a lifetime opportunity if the AI market continues, and if their CPU market continues at this kind of pace. And there's nothing to be like on the Intel side to be scared of. If you go to the expected consumer chips that Intel is gonna launch, Intel already launched Arrow Lake late last year, and Arrow Lake refresh seems to not pan out. So they don't have anything to compete with AMD, especially on the gaming side, which is very important. On the mobile side, it looks better for Intel, especially given that Panther Lake is going to be better than even Lunar Lake, and the Lunar Lake was better than Meteor Lake. So on the mobile side, I think things are looking better for Intel. But on the desktop and DIY kind of market, I don't think so. So I think that's gonna do it for today, just to show you that AMD is more than just AI. Don't listen to all these people, AI. No, there's so much more to AMD, and we haven't even touched in this video about their other segment. Remember the Xilinx FPGA business, right? The legacy Xilinx business on the embedded, and even there we are talking about a little bit of a slowdown over the past 6 to 8 quarters, but they used to have around 1.5 billion in revenue back in Q1 of 2023, and with some form of cyclical growth, we could even here see around 2 billion in revenue quarterly basis. So in a perfect scenario, they have 2 billion in embedded, 2 billion in gaming, 2.5 billion in client. That's 6.5 billion in revenue from everything else other than data center already within 1 year, or 6 quarters time, 1.5 years. So I think people are sleeping on AMD. Like, if you even completely remove the data center GPU part, which is half of their data center sales roughly, they could still be a 10 billion revenue company without the zero sales in AI data centers. So think about that. Anyways, that's gonna do it for today. Thank you for your time. Please like, subscribe, and I really appreciate if you guys subscribe and like, so I can get some more views. It's a lot of competition out there, and I honestly believe that essentially no other YouTuber out there puts enough time and like makes it in this kind of tables here. So I really would appreciate it. So thanks, and see you in the next one.